Hello, welcome to Politricking with myself, Tshidi Madia. This is episode 8 of season 5 of a politics podcast brought to you by Eyewitness News. So, as I'm having this conversation, right, as I'm starting this conversation, winds of change I understand are blowing in Tshwane. At the end of the day, from all I can see, there'll be a new mayor. And it will not be Celia Brink as some had hoped. It'll be possibly who he had appointed as his deputy, Nasipi Moya. Dr. Nasipi Moya of Action SA is likely to be the name that takes the city forward. This, though, has had multiple implications on and conversations, really been a driver of conversations around the government of national unity, how they function, how these different political parties that must power share, right? Meet each other halfway, or rather don't meet each other halfway. And the constant pursuit of power. And very often in these conversations, you're not hearing nearly enough about services, about citizens, about what people want. So we've been having conversations about the capital city because the state of Tshwane is concerning. But we also will continue talking about the GNU. It's marked 100 days in office. I've seen polls about South Africans being optimistic. Are you? I don't know. I've seen people saying it'll go the full yard, i.e., all 5 years again. And I've made this comment quite often. I don't know about that. So I wanted to again get different perspectives on all these issues. As you know, and it's not a secret, John Steenhuisen does not speak to me. I can't get Helen Ziller either, but I found somebody that I think is really interesting, who is a Helen Ziller, John Steenhuisen adjacent, if you may. But this is a leader who's led in the Democratic Alliance for a really long time, who has very strong views, and still, I think, important views about what the DA does and how the DA manages some of its affairs, and of course about where the country is going. He served as an ambassador, he served in parliament. I know that the DA has given him an award, right, for his participation in South Africa's democracy. I'm joined in studio this week by Douglas Gibson. Good day, welcome to Politricking.
Thank you, Tshidi. I do feel welcome, and I'm very pleased to be here with you.
Yeah, I can't get John. I can't get Helen. So I'm going to go to somebody who I know. When you pick up the phone, I imagine they listen to you.
Well, I do talk to them. I'm fond of both of them.
I know very well. So, like I said, I found somebody who's John Steenhuisen and Helen Ziller adjacent because I can't find the current leaders. You weren't necessarily at the negotiation table as far as the GNU is concerned. But again, my firm belief would have been, as those deliberations were happening, the calls came through saying, this is what they're saying, this is what we think is possible. And we are now 100 days, over 100 days into that project. What are your thoughts?
Well, firstly, there was a lot of argy-bargy about what it was going to be called. Was it going to be a coalition? Was it going to be a joining of parties?
The grand coalition
going to be a GNU? It actually doesn't matter. We're all calling it the GNU. There are a whole lot of parties in coalition there. And the important thing is it working or isn't it working? Now, certainly as far as the media and the financial markets and investors are concerned, it's going like a steam train. I mean, you just see some of the quotes. The Financial Times said as follows: signs from stability from South Africa's unity government boost business confidence. News 24 said GNU triggers wave of investment in South Africa. Independent Online said business confidence surges to 4-month high after GNU formation. And so it goes. I could give you 20 of them.
You know what that sounds like,
though? From that point of view, it's certainly a success thus far.
You know what that sounds like, though, Douglas? It sounds like Ramaphoria all over again. I could actually label it Ramaphoria 2.0, where there was some sort of euphoria, there was a lot of hope, and then it amounted to very little in the end.
Well, what one must do is have a look at what the government is doing. And certainly as far as the new ministers are concerned, just bear in mind that there was a lot of comment prior to the election about the aged nature of the cabinet. I mean, there were a whole lot of old age pensioners occupying the seats around the cabinet table. Far too old for a young country like South Africa. And the interesting thing about this government of national unity is the infusion of youth and enthusiasm. I mean, the DA, for example, has got 6 cabinet ministers. 3 of them are in their 30s. They happen to be the youngest ministers in the cabinet. One is in the 40s and one is in the 50s. So we've brought down the average age of the cabinet by a considerable amount. So I think that's interesting. And then you say, what are these new ministers doing? They've never been ministers before. What are they doing? Well, you take somebody like Siviwe Gwarube, who in fact is one of my successors, as she was she was chief whip before they made her a minister. I, of course, was that for 13 or 16 years. And I'm a great admirer of hers. She's a young woman in her early 30s. She's got the guts, she's got the brain, she's got the determination to take the crisis in basic education and turn it around. And I think anybody who argues that there hasn't been or isn't a crisis in basic education is really making a mistake.
I agree with you by and large on Siviwe Gwarube. I do think she's impressive. But on the flip side, you're right about the young ministers. I think the shame on the ANC, and that's something that they must recognize, that the young people that they have appointed to the executive are as deputy ministers, not necessarily leading cabinet, right? So I agree. But on the flip side, one can make an argument that when you look at the ANC cohort and you compare them to the DA counterparts, education is a thing in the ANC. Those are highly qualified individuals as well, where if you look at those who are appointed from the DA, some of them don't have post-matric qualifications, and it's more than one. On the flip side, there is that comparison that when it comes down to it, you've got a Sihle Zikalala who's deputizing a Dean McPherson, and Dean can have energy, and I agree he does. But when it comes down to it, when it comes down to qualifications and even judgment thereof, Sihle would be judged so much more harsher had the shoe been on the other side. Does that make sense?
Well, up to a point. But, for example, Dr. Leon Schreiber has got a doctorate and all sorts of other qualifications. It's not that's making him such an immediate success. It's his personality, his character, his drive, his energy. They've taken a backlog in visa applications that stretched back for a couple of years, and several 100,000 were sitting in piles waiting. And in 1 month, he and the staff got down and they wiped out that backlog completely. Now, you don't need a doctor's degree to do that.
To be able to get the work done.
Determination.
The political will.
Yeah.
But there's also an argument to be made that they're not necessarily implementing anything removed from what the ANC had envisioned. What they're still functioning within are ANC policies. Those are ANC deliverables and ANC manifesto, if you may, because there's been no policy Lekgotla. They've spoken about a policy Lekgotla. We knew what the DA was opposed to, including NHI and Bella Bill. Those things have not been completely taken off the table. They're still very much there. So you've got DA ministers that you're celebrating, but DA ministers, other ministers from different parties implementing ANC policies, no?
No. For example, ANC policy surely can't have been to run Home Affairs into the ground and give lousy service to every South African who ever went near their office.
On paper, that's no one's policy. Yeah. On paper, everyone wants to be effective.
Okay, and then what? Schreiber, let me just stick to him for the moment.
Sure.
He's instituting changes to the whole visa application story. He wants to digitize it all so that you can apply from your home. I mean, I don't know whether that was ANC policy.
The ANC does speak about that too.
They never did it.
That's an implementation issue. I'm not speaking about policy. Okay, in terms of the vision,
yes,
that is being implemented through their actions,
okay,
it's very much aligned with what the ANC has sold to voters.
No,
there's no change, drastic change.
No,
in their presence.
There's a very important change. And even President Ramaphosa emphasizes that the focus of this government is on growth and employment. And if we can do that, if the GNU can succeed in providing growth, through investment and employment, the poverty will be tackled. That's the single most important agreement between all of these parties, and more particularly the DA. The DA said that we have to focus laser-like on growth and investment. And if we do that, we'll be a success. And if we fail at that, GNU will be a failure.
To be fair, all those parties in the GNU agreed to that particular vision. I'll come back to the GNU because we're going to have to come back to some aspects, at least, of that GNU. Let's speak about the city of Tshwane. As I said, by the end of the day, my firm belief is that power would have changed hands completely. There'll be a different political party at the helm. What are your thoughts about what's happening in the capital?
Well, what saddens me is the fact that the citizens of Pretoria seem to be about last in the queue. Their concerns, their interests seem to be on the back burner, and all that matters is politicians getting their hands on power. Now, you had a coalition government which was working, and Celia Brink, whom I've known since he was a schoolboy, is a really excellent fellow. He and that coalition government of his was busy turning the financial situation of Tshwane around. And almost everybody seems to think that they were doing a good job. But he had to be knifed because Mr. Herman Mashaba had his toes champed on or something, and he wasn't going to be insulted and so on. So he pulled his people out of a working coalition and has been dancing around with the ANC, embracing Mr. Panyaza Lesufi and the EFF. And it doesn't surprise me at all why the EFF, in fact, Julius described Herman Mashaba as the EFF mayor of Johannesburg at one stage, to Herman's embarrassment. But so now he's clasping them and he's going to put them in power. It still remains to be seen whether it's going to be an ANC mayor or Dr. Nosipi Moya, whom I know well. I've worked with her. She's a competent person. I don't think she's ready to be the mayor of
she will be by the end of today.
Well, she might be and she might not be.
I think she'll be mayor. Douglas, when you speak about Herman Mashaba dancing around with the ANC, that is condescending. That almost suggests that Herman Mashaba has no right to have agents, or at least Action SA, to decide who they want to work with, that the decisions that they make should be looked at in a particular way. I struggle to process dancing around with the ANC. When he was working with the DA, he wasn't viewed in a negative light.
Well, he got to the stage when he was the mayor of Johannesburg, where he lost the confidence of his own caucus. And that's why he got out, and that's why he went and formed his own party. So it goes back quite a long way now. And in that very first election which he fought, the Action SA fought, they did remarkably well. They stood in only 6 metros in South Africa, and they got a lot of votes. In the general election, which followed recently, they lost more than half the votes that they'd got. And my prediction is that they're going to lose another half of the votes. Because in Tshwane, the people who voted for him must be horrified that what he's doing is taking a working coalition, of which his party was part, taking them out of power and putting the EFF and the ANC in power.
You're not answering my question,
make no mistake
though.
about it, if Dr. Moya becomes the mayor, she's going to do what the ANC and the EFF tell her to do. She's not going to be the boss.
You're not answering my question, though.
Please reframe
Dancing
it.
around with the ANC suggests that he's got no right, or his political party has no right, to self-determine.
He's got the right to dance around with whomever he likes. But he must face the consequences of it, because the sort of people who voted for him certainly wouldn't want to take a working coalition led by the DA with Action SA in it, take it out of power and put the ANC and the EFF into power.
And one can argue that the DA is facing the consequences of being a bad partner, bad coalition partner, because that's part of the complaint. How they got here today, they blame it on how the DA behaves in a partnership, almost as if smaller parties' job is just to back the DA. It's the DA's way or the highway. And the consequence of that kind of attitude is today's outcome.
No, that's just an excuse. It's nonsense. The people who served on the mayoral committee in Tshwane got on like a house on fire.
Yet, Freedom Front Plus has had some complaints. I've spoken to some in Freedom Front Plus about working with the DA. The ANC grumbles every other day. They're members of the GNU. You see Helen Zille making public utterances and threats, in essence, in the public domain quite often.
Well, Helen says if we're all members of the Government of National Unity, surely we should try to cooperate with each other. And surely where the metros in South Africa generally are in a mess, the ANC and the DA should be cooperating. Instead of which, Mr. Lessufi and the Gauteng ANC didn't want any deal at any price with the DA. That's why they kept us out of the provincial...
The so-called GPU vision. The GPU, the Government of Provincial Unity that the DA wanted.
He made derisory offers which he knew the DA couldn't possibly accept. And he seemed to be determined to do the same in the other metros in Gauteng. And in other words, he's busy undermining the spirit of the GNU.
We'll get
and
into
Helen said, if you're going to take an excellent mayor and a working coalition out of power and replace it with something else, then you can't expect us to cooperate with you in stabilizing Nelson Mandela Bay and Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg, all of which are a mess at the moment.
The ANC doesn't need you to stabilize Ekurhuleni. It's working without the DA right there. But what I need you to help me understand
that's your opinion. It's not everybody's opinion.
I live in Ekurhuleni. Yeah. They are in government without the DA's help.
Yeah.
It's not an opinion. Now it's a fact.
Yeah.
The fact is they have a mayor, they have a mayoral committee without the DA in it.
Yes.
That argument is laid bare. That's just a fact. They are there. It's not waiting to elect a mayor. I do know the mayor wants to incorporate the DA, but that stability with or without the DA is there. The quality of services, as a resident, you can ask me a different question. But before I do that, I want you to help me understand how at every turn almost, the DA says, do it this way, we walk away. There's a constant threat of GNU falling apart. And that comes from quarters of the DA.
That's never...
let me finish. I'll give you examples. Don't sign the Bella Bill or we will walk. Don't do this or we will walk. Cilliers Brink or we will walk. That is a constant thing that finds its way into the media landscape. It's coming from the mouths of leaders in the Democratic Alliance. Do not sign the Bella Bill or the DA will reconsider its position and walk away. Do not do this or the DA will do that. So how do you expect to have a functional power-sharing relationship when at every turn, and you do it again in the public domain, you're consistently 1 foot out the door?
Well, I think you're totally misinterpreting it.
Okay.
Nobody said they're going to walk out of the GNU because of Tshwane. Nobody said that.
Bring back or the GNU is vulnerable, or the GNU is under threat, or the GNU might not last.
Or you can't expect the DA to help you stabilize the city councils, the metros, that need stabilization in the interests of the people. There's a hell of a difference than saying we're walking out of the GNU. We haven't said that. As far as the two bills that have been a problem, one of them is the Bella Bill, and it's quite clear why, and this comes a long way. The DA says the Constitution gives people the right to mother tongue education. And that's not just white people or Afrikaans people or English people. It's Zulu, it's everybody. It's well known all over the world that mother tongue education is a huge benefit and boon. Because here in South Africa, you've got a situation where so many of our township children, for example. They have a year or two perhaps in the vernacular, and then they've got to do maths and English and all of these things in a tongue they don't speak at home. And we say that aspect is unconstitutional, and it's also wrong to say that school governing bodies shouldn't have a say about the numbers that can be accommodated in the school. Now, Mr. Lessufi, my favourite politician, he has built up a reputation of being anti-Afrikaans. And this seems to be, I'm English speaking, I'm here, but I like Afrikaans and I speak it well. But he seems to have the idea that there shouldn't be any Afrikaans schools. And we know what's going to happen, because if the Bella Bill is implemented as it is now, the Gauteng Education Department is going to tell every one of these Afrikaans schools that they've got to integrate, they've got to create possibilities for others. The problem is that it's the schools that work that are the target of this. It's not the schools that don't work. So the emphasis is on exactly the wrong thing.
I don't understand the level of fragility over Afrikanerdom in a country where Oranje is allowed to exist. I have an issue with the fact that it exists, but South Africa's democracy allows for an enclave like that to exist. South Africa's government, even before coalition, allowed for something like that to exist. Why would they not allow for Afrikaans schools to exist? But I don't want to get into that. Let's actually get into Panyaza Lessufi. I mean, he seems to be a point that you want to keep taking me to.
I just want to, just on that Bella Bill, I think that it was an absolutely responsible approach which was taken by Siviwe and the DA, because she went to President Ramaphosa and said, look, I can't come to the festivities for the signing of this. Please excuse me. And he, to his credit, then announced that they were not implementing the unconstitutional clauses for 3 months to give the government an opportunity of reconsidering and of discussing. And I think that was excellent on his part, and it was also excellent on her part, because she also announced that if that becomes the law of South Africa, she will have to, and her department will have to implement it.
Yes, because that's her job. She serves the government and the people.
So I think she's been pretty good on that. The other really difficult one is NHI.
Yes.
Now, I don't think there is anybody in South Africa who doesn't want every citizen of our country to have good health care. But the way this is being tackled, it seems to me we're going to break down that which works, and we're not going to build up that which doesn't work. You go to so many of the hospitals where the masses of our people have to go, and the treatment they get is simply not acceptable. That's where we should be focusing, not telling Santon Mediclinic or somewhere that you've got to take everybody. You remember Mr. Lessufi announced 2 days before the election.
Oh my goodness, you cannot let go of Panyaza. Let's talk about Panyaza. I'm well aware of what Panyaza said, and I also had said on the radio where I found fault lines in Panyaza making people believe that NHI will be happening tomorrow. You can go to any hospital. That's classic populism actually at play. Let's speak about Panyaza Lessufi. It's interesting that you speak about Ramaphosa and you speak of him as having made excellent decisions, at least in dealing with the Bella Bill. There's been nothing positive that's come out of you as far as Panyaza is concerned. Is Panyaza Lessufi a soft target for the DA? Is he like low-hanging fruit about what you think is happening with the ANC? Because it feels like a campaign to get at the ANC via Panyaza Lessufi.
Well, I don't support or approve of him at all. I'm certainly not part of a campaign against him. I think what he should do is sit down and have a close look again at the election figures. Under his leadership, the Gauteng ANC dropped, was it from 58% down to 36%. Any other political leader would have resigned and accepted responsibility. Not him. Not him. So the people have rejected him. He's now got you just take it as that 64% of the people in Gauteng do not support him and voted against him.
The Ramaphosa you praised not too long ago also did not get a vote of confidence from citizens.
Yes.
They also could not get a clear majority on his watch.
Yes.
Yet you're able to praise some elements of his leadership.
Yes, well, if Premier Lesotho does some good things, of course I'll praise him.
The desperation almost feels desperate to me to peg Panyaza Lesotho up against the ANC at national level has been quite consistent. When does the DA accept that the ANC itself says they would have consulted, that some of these actions that are being taken in the province, this is now regarding the GPU, and in the metros, aren't happening outside of the ANC at national level? I know, for instance, with Tshwane, Fikile Mbalula met with them. Fikile Mbalula met with them to consult about the way forward.
Yes.
And WC members, that's the National Working Committee of the ANC, went. The president of that party, i.e. the country as well, would have also been briefed about what is on the table and what the options are.
Yes.
But the person who's problematic is always consistently just Panyaza. He doesn't lead alone.
He's the leader of Gauteng. He's the one who sets the tone. He's the one who had to put together a government. He's chosen to have a minority government in Gauteng. I don't know how stable that's going to be. He's therefore going, when he wants to get a budget through, he's either going to have to rely on the EFF or the DA for support. And so you better make sure that one or the other of those parties supports the budget proposals. Otherwise, he won't get a budget through, or any other legislation for that matter. I mean, given the example of the Government of National Unity, which I think is working quite well, you'd think that it would be possible for the powerhouse of South Africa, that being Gauteng, to at least get together sufficient people who would agree on some program that would give them a majority in the provincial legislature. And I think it's a shame that we're sitting with that situation.
What do you say to Helen? Because Helen's also been quite vocal about her thoughts on Panyaza Lesotho. In fact, I often feel like she's become a political commentator on ANC matters and ANC factions lately, more than anything else. What do you say to her? Because she also echoes similar sentiments about Panyaza Lesotho specifically.
Yes. Look, I've known Helen for more than 50 years. I was elected to the Transvaal Provincial Council as an MPC in 1970. And soon after that, she was a young reporter of the Rand Daily Mail in the gallery. So I've known her for a long time. We've had disagreements. Sometimes I've disapproved of what she said, and no doubt she's disapproved of me. But at the moment, and for a long time now, we've been on kissing terms, and she's an extremely kind, thoughtful, decent person. And where my family has been through difficult times in the last couple of years, she's been a very steadfast and firm friend. So I like her, I support her. When she was the leader, I certainly backed her 100%, and I think she's doing a good job as chair of the Federal Council, more particularly in that John Steenhuisen now has ministerial obligations.
Your thoughts on, and I'm glad you spoke about how you and I have had some differences in the past. Some of these GNU partners, their irritation is Helen as well, outside of the ANC. I've spoken to a few of them and they say every time you listen to the radio, you read the news, Helen has something to say about the GNU. And that is a problem for them who are within the GNU. And they'll say to you, Helen, there's no Helen Zille in government. We're getting along just fine. But we're irritated by her constant public commentary. What would you say to that?
Well, they must carry on being irritated. Helen is Helen. She was elected by a huge majority within the party to the position she fills at the moment. And she'll be up for election again soon when there's a Congress. And they'll either re-elect her or not.
And your thoughts on John?
She's a very fond gogo. and she spends a lot of time with her grandchildren now too.
Yes, I believe that. And your thoughts on John? And I want to jog your memory back to when John Steenhuisen was going up against Mbalintuli. And I called you. And I remember you referring to people like Mbalintuli, in fact, young black leaders, as failed experiments, saying that the DS tried these experiments
No,
and
I
it
never
didn't
said
work.
that. I never said
I
that.
actually have the
deny.
audio. You'll be surprised. I'll find it
Okay,
and play
but
it for
you record it.
I record everything.
Well, you
so
play it
I'll
to
find
me.
it and I'll WhatsApp it to you. But you spoke about how the DA had tried those experiments and they were failed experiments. You spoke about Lindwe Mazibuko, Musi Maimani at the time, and you said, Mbalintuli, it's a no for you. You're backing John Steenhuisen. Are you still fully confident in John's leadership?
Yes, I am. I've known him a long time. He's earned his spurs in politics. He was an outstanding chief whip for a number of years. He's a very good orator. And I think the role he's playing, for example, in the Government of National Unity is excellent. He made a really important speech recently, and he set out the whole position of where the DA is in it and what can be expected and on what basis they would have to get out. And I think that's important, that his exemplary leadership should be recognised and followed. He says that he's had to keep the DA focused and positive, and during his ministerial thing, of course, he's had to get to know all the farmers and all the agricultural things. He's done some important stuff with China and our exports and so on. But he says now that the DA is in government, it's got a responsibility to meet the challenge of the hour and help to turn South Africa around. But he says the DA's only got 22% of the seats in Parliament. It could not fix everything. Even if the DA had an outright majority, South Africa was in dire straits, that any government would have to focus its efforts on a small number of critical priorities. This GNU has made a clear strategic choice, and a single priority, and the single priority of the DA, which I mentioned earlier, economic growth and job creation. And he repeated, jobs and growth. Because the economy is the engine that pulls the whole train forward. If we couldn't get that going, then it's going to be a failure. But he says he's not going to allow anything to get in the way of ensuring that growth goes up and unemployment goes down. And that, if that means, just listen to this, if that means causing a measure of distress inside the Government of National Unity, then so be it. The people of South Africa are more important than the feelings of politicians.
That's an interesting one from John because he has very strong feelings. Hence, I said at the beginning, John does not talk to me. It's very interesting.
Why is that?
Because
You're such
John
a
has
nice
feelings.
person.
I know, I'm a wonderful person.
And he's
but
a
clearly
nice
John
person.
Is he? I don't know.
Perhaps I must arrange a tea party.
It really actually doesn't matter if politicians are nice or not. It's that what matters is politicians' willingness to account to constituencies. That's what we represent as media personalities, particularly as journalists, as we are the connection between you and your voters. So his feelings are neither here nor there for me. But the point is he doesn't do interviews with me. I would have never thought that I'd see a John in China, and we did quite recently. In my head, I cannot imagine a John in in Russia, but BRICS is coming, and BRICS is in Russia. Are you expecting John Steenhuisen and the likes to go to Russia?
I really don't know. I would imagine that if he's part of the delegation, he'd go with pleasure. He's learning. He wants to learn. He wants to achieve things and point to things that have improved and have happened as a result of his being in that ministry. He hasn't gone there to have a little snooze.
We'd hope not. What would you say to those who feel that out of the 6 ministers that you mentioned earlier from the DA, you celebrate Siwe Kwagube, and I completely agree with you. In fact, I even think Aisha Soropan is incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
Many people feel John Steenhuisen, the leader of the organization, is actually the weak link. What's your reaction to that?
In what respect? You mean as the
Almost in
leader
every
or
respect.
as a minister?
As a minister, that out of all of them, in terms of performance, he's the one who seems to be struggling to make some gains. So when you look at John Steenhuisen as a minister, there's a Roman cabinet appointment that he now can't get out of. When you look at John Steenhuisen as a minister, there are those appointments that he asked for deviations on that he lied about. You've got the EFF now reporting him to the ethics committee. When you look at John Steenhuisen as a minister, he lauds and celebrates milestones that the now speaker, former minister Togo Didiza, actually achieved, and she's now releasing statements saying the achievement you're claiming we actually achieved and communicated publicly years ago. He's the one minister where every move he almost makes has to be rectified, corrected, because
I'm sorry, I totally disagree with you.
you're allowed to.
He made some. He made a very unfortunate appointment of chief of staff of this Roman cabinet guy.
Which he defended at first,
Yes.
pointed out by the public, and he still dug in his heels
yes.
defending it.
I think that he didn't know who Roman cabinet
No
was. I had never
ways.
heard of him.
No ways. The Purple
I've been
Cow.
in politics
He
for
was hosting
70
Helen Zille's podcast. What are we talking about? How does the DA not know? He was servicing a leader of the DA for a really long time. How does the DA say he does not know who he
Well,
is?
I'd never heard of him. I don't know whether John knew him or didn't know him.
That's
But
unreal.
eventually he said, all right, he's going to get rid of him. And now Kaepernick, of course, wants a nice payola. There it is. I think that was unfortunate. But that actually had nothing much to do with...
Is that not about John's character, the leader's character? Because if you didn't know him, then let's go with you didn't know him. He didn't do his homework either. You didn't check on who this person is. But yet you met with him. You had a whole coffee. You said to him, "Oh, I've got this job for you, this fantastic job of serving the nation." But you don't do your due diligence. You've got this great opportunity, this big task. You complain about cadre deployment, but this is what you're going to do. You don't vet your
Now,
candidates.
the other side of the coin is who nominated these ministers that you think are such a success? John did, and the deputy ministers. He had 100 people in 99 or whatever it is to choose from, and he's chosen a really good bunch.
I have an answer for that.
Shows very good leadership.
I have an answer for that, and I don't know if I agree with it's good leadership. I've got a different response to that, actually.
What's
Would
that?
you like to get my view?
Yes, I'd
Because
love
there is
to.
a skills deficit in the DA. The DA has the cream of the crop, and they are seen and celebrated, but they're actually few and far in between. If you look at the skills in the room, in the DA, when you look at the caucus, the cream of the crop is miles ahead of everyone else in the same room. So it's not a difficult task to look around the room and pick the cream of the crop. It's actually easy to see who's the cream of the crop in the DA. And there are some of those ministers who've had conversations with me, multiple of leaders in the DA go, actually, if they'd given us 10 posts, we'd be in trouble. They say that.
Now, just turn that one on its head. The ANC has got, it's down to 140 MPs or something.
The ANC has many problems. We know that.
And we know the people that they choose seem not to be the cream of the crop. There are plenty of them who are bizarre choices.
You're correct.
Starting with the Minister of Defence. I mean, imagine.
You can even say Pemi Majortina was a bizarre choice. I agree, but I'm not asking you to account for ANC ministers. The ANC is responsible for that.
Yeah.
You are defending the decisions that have been made by the Democratic Alliance,
Yeah.
and I'm now saying to you, actually, the choice wasn't that difficult for John Steenhuisen to make because in the room, you don't have much. You don't have a lot of options to make.
I beg to differ. There's some
I
really
could not see.
excellent
I
people
scanned
there.
that room at the swearing again, and I was like, if the DA is given many positions as far as cabinet's concerned, it is in trouble. And as I'm saying to you now, some of those DA leaders said the same thing to me. Said, yeah, if they'd given us 10 posts, 10 ministries, we're going to be in trouble. They were aware of it.
Oh, I don't believe it.
You don't
They-
have to. It's okay.
Anybody who says that is probably jealous because they weren't appointed.
But some of these people are those who are appointed who are making those remarks.
I don't. I would be very surprised to hear that Dr. Dion George or Dr. Leon
I'm obviously not going to
Schreiber.
tell you, but I said plenty of them.
Yeah.
And I speak to plenty of leaders in the DA
I'm
across the
sure.
board.
I'm
But a
sure.
lot of them felt like,
Yeah.
look, if we're given these many opportunities, it wouldn't have worked out. I am almost done with you. What must happen in Gauteng? You have consistently picked and probed at Panyaza Lusufi. Should the DA not give up on the conversation or even the idea of co-governing in Gauteng? Do you think that doors should remain open?
Oh, we were more than prepared to negotiate, to co-govern, bearing in mind that they had, I don't know, 4 or 5% more than we did in terms of votes. So they were obviously going to lead. We were more than happy for that, but then you had to give the DA people respectable portfolios. You can't just give them all the rubbish and tell them to keep quiet and vote for the ANC. And so if Mr. Premier Lessufi or anybody else for that matter were to approach the DA and said, let's look at it again, see whether we can find each other in the interests of the people of Gauteng, think the DA would jump at that.
I forgot to almost ask this question, but it just came to me now. Why was your thoughts about the DA's fierce defense of Celia Brink? You spoke about how you've known him for a really long time, from a very young age. In fact, a lot of the DA leaders are people you seem to have known from a very young age, from very early on in their careers.
Yes.
Mpo Palaz, who was excellent, a qualified doctor who led in Johannesburg, would make an argument, and I think a successful one, that the DA did not go all out. You were not opining, backing Mpo Palazzi. There were no campaigns, retain Palazzi, bring back Palazzi. There wasn't the necessary vigor or even threat to walk away or not to back the ANC anyway in the name of retaining Mpo Palazzi. What is so important about Celia, or what is so important about Tshwane?
No, but you must remember the circumstances were totally different, because the EFF and the ANC and the PAC, or whatever, PA, had put together a deal together with Al Jamaa. So there was they voted her out and put them in. Now, I liked her, and I still like her, and I think she's got huge potential for the future. When she was the mayor, I thought she did an outstanding job. I happened at that time to be the chairman of the board of directors of City Power, which has gone down and down and down ever since the EFF and ANC slit my throat and put somebody more to their taste in, as they did in all the public utilities. But I supported her to the hilt. Where I did not support her is where she suddenly popped up and thought she should be the leader of the opposition in South Africa, the leader of the DA. She hadn't served 1 minute in Parliament. She'd been a city councillor and a successful mayor for a year or two, and there was just no basis on which she really could be elected. And the result was that a Congress, which was probably more than 3/4 black, chose John rather than her. And I thought it was such a pity that she ever stood in the first place. She has such potential, and now, of course, she's got to earn a living. So she's gone off to be in practice, because a doctor can do a hell of a lot better than a city councillor does. But I hope that she's not lost to the party. I think she's still a member, and she certainly has never said anything against the party. So I like her, and I would love to see her back.
And as I wrap up, though, your thoughts on the DA and the DA's future.
Yes.
What do you see? What do you hope for?
Well, firstly, just bear in mind what the facts are. The fact is that the DA is the most non-racial or multiracial party in South Africa by far. There's no other party that comes anywhere close to it. If you need any proof of that, white voters are down to 7% of the electorate. The DA got 22% of the votes, which means that 16% or whatever came from other communities, coloured, black, Indian, whatever. But we're the most multiracial party, and we want to see that there must be a place for everybody. We're the party of the Constitution of South Africa, which is a beautiful piece of work, and I'm so proud of having played some part in it when we negotiated it 30 years ago. And if only we could stick to that and regard every person, every South African, as a person of value. The individual human being is the touchstone of value and is worth their dignity.
And John is still fit for purpose to continue leading. You see another round for him. You think he should be re-elected?
Yes, I think so. I think he will be re-elected. I haven't seen anybody looming on the horizon who, at this stage, you could say, well, he or she should be the leader.
He's still fit for purpose?
Yes, I think so.
Why do you think, I have to just continue a little bit on this thread for a little bit. Why do you think then there was this whole dilemma about funders not necessarily liking him, not finding him palatable, opening the door for forcing parties to work together, i.e. the Moonshot Pact, opening the door for ideas like Roger Jardine to exist, which really went nowhere?
I'm sorry, are you blaming John for Roger Jardine's disaster?
No, I'm not blaming John. I'm asking that the room that created the event that created the reason room was created for characters like Roger to think that they could give it a go is this constant notion that funders were uncomfortable with the current leader of the DA, that funders aren't necessarily confident in a John Steenhuisen at the helm.
Well, I don't think that's true at all. If you look at the fundraising for the election, you'll see that the DA got mega millions more than anybody else. So
As
the
it usually does,
but,
actually.
there's some rich
Next to the
people.
NC.
Some rich people like to give 15 million here and 15 million there. I wish they'd give me 15 million.
No one should give a politician
No,
15 million rand.
I really
Thank
don't
you.
think that. I don't think that is
That there's
true
any
at
truth.
all.
You think that funders still very much love John Steenhuisen. They're not waiting for the next best thing to come around the corner in the DA.
Or they love the DA or want to see the DA make a good contribution to South Africa. And I'm sure the funders are, both of the ANC and the DA, are delighted that the Government of National Unity exists, that it seems to be doing a good job, and it's not going to disappear next week.
You think it's going to get to 5 years?
I think it could, but let's just see whether Mr. Mashatile and company managed to knife President Ramaphosa.
What?
We'll see.
It's a knife.
Well, get rid of him. Let's put it that way.
I think the DA will fight for Cyril Ramaphosa to keep his job and to get to the next 5 years. All right. Thank you so much, Douglas, for your time. That's Douglas Gibson speaking to us about the Democratic Alliance, GNU, and of course, developments in Tshwane. My bet, when this day ends, when the dust settles, Dr. Nasipi Moyo will be the new mayor of Tshwane.
Well, good luck to her. She's a nice person, and I liked her when I worked with her.
And she'll be capable of running a city. Anyone can. Kabelo Kwamanda did it in Joburg. Thank you.